Get out, the business is mine. Daniel Cole was standing in the lobby of the company he had built from a garage with $300 and a broken printer, when his own daughter looked him in the eye and told him he no longer belonged there. "Get out, Dad," Emily said, her voice flat, rehearsed, like she'd practiced it in a mirror. "The business is mine now." Daniel almost laughed. He would have laughed if the two security guards behind her hadn't been real. The garage. 17 years earlier, Daniel Cole was 31 years old, sleeping on a mattress on the floor of a rented garage in Ohio, because the apartment upstairs had been repossessed along with almost everything else he owned. He had a laptop with a cracked hinge, a used office chair he'd found on the curb, and an idea for a logistics software platform that everyone he pitched it to called cute, right before they said no. His wife Sarah had left 2 years before that, not out of cruelty, she said, but exhaustion. "I can't watch you chase something that isn't chasing you back," she told him the night she packed the car. She took almost nothing. She left him one thing, their 5-year-old daughter, Emily, every other weekend, because the court said joint custody was fair, even for a man with no fixed income and a mattress on a garage floor. Those weekends were the only thing that kept Daniel from quitting. He would set Emily up in the corner of the garage with crayons and a stack of printer paper while he coded through the night, and sometimes she would fall asleep on a pile of moving blankets, and he would carry her the 6 blocks to the tiny room he rented and come back and keep working, because morning was coming and morning didn't care how tired he was. "When I grow up," 6-year-old Emily told him once, half asleep, crayon still in her fist, "I'm going to help you. I'm going to draw the trucks and you can make them move on the computer." He kept that piece of paper, a crooked blue truck with square wheels. He kept it in his wallet for 17 years. The company was called Rootwise. It took 4 years to get its first real client, 6 years to turn a profit, and 11 years to become the thing venture capitalists suddenly wanted to be photographed next to. By the time Emily was 22, Rootwise employed 412 people and had just closed a valuation that made the local news, $47 million. Daniel didn't buy a yacht. He didn't buy a mansion. He bought Emily a good education, a car that wouldn't break down on the highway, and the year she graduated college with a business degree, a title. Chief Operating Officer. "You earned it," he told the board when 2 of them raised eyebrows. "She's been in these offices since she was 5 years old. She knows this company's bones better than anyone alive except me." What he didn't say, because he didn't fully understand it himself yet, was that Emily had spent those same years learning something else in the offices of Rootwise, not the bones of the business, but the anatomy of the boardroom. Who flattered whom? Whose ego needed stroking? Which investor could be quietly turned, one lunch at a time, against the man who'd built the company from nothing? The turn. It started small enough that Daniel told himself he was imagining it. Emily began scheduling meetings without telling him. Board members who used to call Daniel first started calling him second, or not at all. An investor named Marcus Reyes, a smooth, careful man Daniel had never fully trusted, started showing up to lunch with Emily twice a month, then weekly. "She's building relationships," Daniel told himself. "That's good. That's what a COO is supposed to do." He wanted to believe it so badly that he didn't ask the harder question. Relationships built toward what? The answer came on a Tuesday in March, in the form of an email Daniel wasn't supposed to see. His assistant, Priya, forwarded it to him by accident, a slip of a misdirected reply, all, and by the time Daniel finished reading it, his hands weren't steady enough to hold his coffee. The email was between Emily and Marcus Reyes. The subject line read, "Timeline for transition." Marcus confirming the board vote is scheduled for the 14th. I have 4 of 7 committed. Once Daniel's founder shares are diluted through the new financing round, the vote won't even need to be close. He built something extraordinary, and I mean that. but he's stuck running this like it's still the garage. We need someone who can scale it the way the market wants. I know how that sounds coming from me, but it's business, not betrayal. It's business, not betrayal. Daniel read that sentence 11 times. He thought about the crooked blue truck in his wallet. He thought about carrying a sleeping 5-year-old 6 blocks in the cold, because there was no other way to keep working and keep her safe at the same time. He thought about every dinner he'd missed, every recital, every version of fatherhood he'd sacrificed on the altar of a company he told himself he was building for her. He did not confront her that day. He was many things, but he was not a man who moved on instinct when a decision mattered. He'd learned that lesson the hard way more than once in 17 years of near bankruptcies and boardroom knife fights. So instead, Daniel did what he always did when the ground shifted under him. He got quiet and he got to work. The vote. The board meeting on the 14th was scheduled for 10 a.m. Daniel arrived at 6. He sat alone in the conference room where he'd once pitched Rootwise's very first investor over a laptop with a cracked hinge. In the same building, he'd signed the first lease for with his hands shaking because he wasn't sure the check would clear. He looked at the framed photo on the wall. The whole team on the day they hit 100 employees. Emily, 11 years old, in the front row, holding a handmade sign that said, "We made it, Daddy." He was still looking at that photo when Emily walked in at 9:45. Marcus raised a half step behind her, and 2 security guards from the building's private contractor a half step behind him. "Dad." Emily's voice had a practiced steadiness to it, the kind Daniel recognized because he'd taught it to her without meaning to, the tone you use when you need people to believe you're calm. "We need to talk before the board arrives." "I know about the vote, Emily." Something flickered across her face, not guilt, Daniel noted, but calculation, recalibration. "Then you know this isn't personal. The company's outgrown." "Get out, Dad," she said instead, cutting straight to it, because apparently the speech she'd prepared wasn't built for a father who already knew. "The business is mine now." The 2 security guards did not move. They didn't need to, not yet. But their presence in the room said everything her words hadn't finished saying. "We planned for you to make this difficult." Daniel looked at his daughter for a long moment. 29 years old. Sharp suit, sharper eyes. The same eyes that used to well up with pride handing him crayon drawings of trucks. "Okay," he said. That single word did more damage to Emily's composure than any argument could have. She'd steeled herself for a fight. She hadn't steeled herself for surrender. "Okay," she repeated. "You want the company," Daniel said, standing, buttoning his jacket. "Fine, let's have the vote." What the board didn't know. At 10 a.m., 7 board members filed into the room Daniel had once bled for. Marcus Reyes sat close to Emily. 2 other members Daniel recognized as recent additions, brought on during the last funding round, at Emily's recommendation, sat near them too. The alignment of the room told its own story before a word was spoken. Emily stood to open the meeting. She spoke about operational modernization and founder transition planning and protecting shareholder value, phrases that sounded like they'd been focus grouped, because they had been. She proposed a motion: transition Daniel Cole from CEO to a non-operating chairman emeritus role, effective immediately, with Emily Cole assuming full operational and executive control. It was a motion designed to sound generous. Emeritus, chairman, words with dignity stitched into them so that anyone watching from outside would see a graceful handoff, not a coup. "All in favor," Emily said, and 4 hands went up before she'd even finished the sentence. 4 of 7. Exactly as promised in the email Daniel wasn't supposed to see. "Before we finalize," Daniel said, still standing at the head of the table, "I'd like the board to look at something." He placed a single folder on the table. Inside it, not sentiment, not a crayon drawing of a truck. Numbers. Specifically, a forensic accounting summary that Priya, the same assistant who'd accidentally forwarded that email, had helped him quietly compile over 3 sleepless weeks, cross-referencing every vendor contract Marcus Ray's firm had steered toward route-wise over the past 18 months. Marcus Ray's doesn't just sit on this board, Daniel said. His firm holds an undisclosed equity stake in 2 of our largest logistics vendors. Every contract renewal Emily has pushed through in the last year has routed more business toward those 2 vendors, at rates 12 to 18% above market. That's not modernization. That's a kickback structure, and I believe at least one other board member in this room benefited from it directly. The room went very still. That's absurd, Marcus said too quickly. It's documented, Daniel said. Bank routing numbers, shell entity filings, dated correspondence. I'll email it to every person in this room in the next 60 seconds if the vote proceeds. Emily's face had gone pale. Not because she hadn't known, Daniel would learn later that she genuinely hadn't, not the specifics, but because she understood in that instant precisely how thoroughly she had been used. Emily, Daniel said, gentler now, though every board member in the room could still hear him. I built this company sleeping on a garage floor so you'd never have to sleep on one. I gave you a seat at this table because I trusted you'd earned the right to sit in it. I didn't think I'd have to teach you that being ready to run something means understanding who's actually in the room with you. He turned back to the board. I'm not asking you to remove my daughter. I built this company on the belief that people deserve a second chance to prove who they are. I got plenty of those chances myself, from investors who had no good reason to give them to a broke single father with a garage and a bad idea. What I am asking is that you table this vote, order an independent audit of Ray's Capital's involvement in our vendor contracts, and let the facts, not a rehearsed speech, decide what happens next. The vote to table passed 6-1. Marcus Ray's voted no. He resigned from the board 11 days later, the same week the audit confirmed everything in Daniel's folder and then some. The garage again. Emily didn't speak to her father for 19 days after that meeting. On the 20th day, she showed up at his house, not the office, his actual house, the modest one he'd never upgraded even after the valuation made headlines, and stood on the porch like she was 22 years old again, home from college with news she wasn't sure how to deliver. I didn't know about the vendor thing, she said. I want you to know that. I was wrong about a lot, but I didn't know about that. I know, Daniel said. I checked the emails. You genuinely believed you were building relationships. Ray's just built better ones underneath yours and let you carry the weight of a plan you didn't fully understand. Emily's eyes filled. Why aren't you angrier at me? Daniel thought about that question longer than she probably expected. Because I remember exactly what it felt like to be young and certain and wrong, he said. I burned through 2 investors' trust before I understood what trust actually cost. You didn't invent ambition, Emily. You inherited it from me. I just never taught you what to do with the parts of it that turn ugly because I was too busy being proud you had it at all. He reached into his wallet, the same wallet he'd carried for over a decade, patched at the seam, and pulled out a folded, faded piece of paper. A crooked blue truck with square wheels, drawn by a 6-year-old on the floor of a garage that no longer existed. You said you wanted to help me make the trucks move, he said. I never forgot that. I don't think you actually wanted the company, Emily. I think you wanted to matter to it the way I mattered to it. There's a difference, and I never once sat you down and explained it because it was easier to just hand you a title and call it love. She cried on the porch for a long time. Daniel let her. What came after? Rootwise didn't collapse. If anything, the scandal handled publicly, transparently, with Daniel personally briefing every employee before a single reporter got the story, made the company more trusted, not less. Investors, it turned out, respected a founder who cleaned his own house in daylight far more than one who pretended the house was already clean. Emily kept her seat but not her old title. She asked for a demotion herself, back to a regional operations role, the kind of job where the only currency that mattered was whether the trucks actually moved on time. She spent a year there. She was good at it, better, Daniel noticed, than she'd ever been as COO, because for the first time in her adult life, nobody was managing her ambition for her. She was managing the work. 2 years after the board meeting that almost ended everything, Daniel stood at the front of a much bigger conference room. The company now valued past $60 million and announced his retirement as CEO. There's exactly one person in this building who has spent her entire life inside these walls, who has made every mistake ambition can make and survived learning from it, and who I trust to protect this company the way I built it to be protected, not with titles but with truth, he said. Emily Cole will be Rootwise's next CEO. This time there was no rehearsed speech, no security guards in the hallway, no folder of evidence on the table. Just Emily, standing to accept it, holding Daniel noticed, and had to look away for a moment to compose himself, a small, framed copy of a crooked blue truck with square wheels. I told my dad once that I wanted to help him make the trucks move, she said to the room. It took me 29 years and one enormous mistake to understand what that actually meant. It doesn't mean owning the wheel. It means never forgetting who taught you to drive. Daniel Cole didn't leave the company that day. He took an office 3 doors down from his daughter's, small, unglamorous, the same battered desk he'd used in the garage 17 years earlier, moved in specially at his request. He wasn't there to run Rootwise anymore. He was there, simply, in case she ever needed to ask him something, and more often than either of them expected, she did.